Halli Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a smart, witty, and timely podcast brought to you at a time when Americans are getting fed up with all the shouting and bickering in Washington, D.C. So I, Halli Casser-Jayne, and veteran White House correspondent Matthew Cooper are here to offer you an insightful, engaging journey into the world of politics, always with a smile, and dialogue that snap, crackles, and pops, and with our very special guests. We strive to offer a different take on all things politics in our weekly conversations. So pour yourselves a martini, grab a spot on your favorite sofa, and have a listen as we tackle it all and like to stir and sometimes shake things up. On this episode of the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, in the continuing saga of the Donald Trump presidency, we talk George Conway, Beto O'Rourke, Devin Nunes and a cow, and wit with the author of WIT'S End, What Wit Is, How It Works, and Why We Need It, James Geary. And we're just beginning. Here we go. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Halli.
I didn't start the way I normally start. I said, good afternoon, Matthew. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you, Halli.
I've been talking to a bunch of lunatics today, so you're looking sane compared to everybody else.
Yeah, geez, thanks. I think that's a compliment.
That's a compliment. So look forward to our weekly conversations.
Absolutely, I do too.
All right, so here's where we're going to start this week. I'm trying to chunk it down into different categories, so we're not so all over the place. Because this was a week of pieces, a lot of little different pieces coming together, I thought, and it was all over the map. So we're going to start with the election 2020, which is in full swing. And I'm going to start by saying to you, I'm not wanting to listen to all of these people yet do their CNN and their MSNBC things. It's like we're going to be so exhausted by this by the time this thing gets real. I don't know.
Totally.
Right? And it's just politics is big business, and it's annoying to me. So I want to begin with Mr. Trump, who spent more time on social media than even I did, and that's saying something because that guy went on a rant, 50 tweets on Saturday?
I think something like that, yeah.
What's going on with that?
Well, just to make it about me for a second, I've taken Facebook and Twitter off my phone. I just can't do it.
Oh, God.
I check in occasionally on the laptop, but it's too much. It's such a time suck, so addictive. But enough about me. Yeah, well, clearly something's got him either agitated or happy. It's, the Times did this report, and different people in the West Wing had their own theories about why he accelerated so much this weekend. Some thought because he was in a good mood. Others thought he was, more dour about his future. So who knows why he does what he does. But, it's crazy.
It is crazy, though. See, that's the thing. It's crazy. Yeah. And it's like he shoots himself in the foot. I'm not even sure why he goes.
Although in the crazy like a fox tradition, I think.
I'm not so sure, because I'm thinking to myself, he gets all this stuff going on. Economy's looking good. You could say 1,000 things that are in his favor, and none of them are being talked about because all anybody is talking about is his crazy on the internet. He can't be that dumb. You say crazy like a fox?
No, I don't know if he's crazy like a fox, or is there something between crazy and sly? I guess it can be a little of both, right?
I think he's a very self-destructive man, and that's what I think. And the only reason he survived and has thrived the way that he has is because he had $7-point-something billion left by his father. I read something very interesting today. That he doesn't have any more money today, maybe even less than what he was left by the estate of his dad and all of that. He's parlayed that into making everybody think that he's got $1 gazillion. But when you get down to the bottom line, he's exactly where he started off. So okay, whatever. So I'm not so sure how sane he is or how crazy like a fox he is. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. But he was really on a crazy lunatic rant, and it continues.
Yeah, and there's no question his according to the Times story, his aides were telling him that the tweeting was hurting even with his supporters.
Right. But he doesn't care.
Still, he was a mad tweeter when he got elected. And, let's see if he's
sorry for him in a way. Can I say that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's sitting alone there. He's not with his family, as Meghan McCain said, right?
He's really a very unloved man.
Or perceives he's unloved. I think.
Well, no, he is an unloved man because people who worship and celebrity, gawkers, if you will, that's not love.
Yeah. Well, his sister. I don't know.
God, she doesn't sound any better than the rest of them. All right,
enough about his kids.
Enough about that. About that. I don't keep going there with that. But I do want to talk about some of these characters and I'm saying characters because that's what they're caricatures at this point. We don't know them who are running for from the Democratic side. And we had some movement in that. I want to start with Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Whoa. He gets into the race, and I have to tell you, the left wing went after this guy like, oh my God, I was shocked. I was stunned. I was thrown back in my chair. I was watching MSNBC last night and them just tear him to Heidi Prisbola. And by God, they were killing him. They were ripping him. Those arms, none of them are on in his body anymore. They have just ripped them
off. Those are very active arms. Yeah.
Talk to me about what's going on with the. Well, let me preface. He did make $1.6 million. He beat Bernie Sanders in his announcement amount of money. However,
6.1. Yeah,
it was 6.1. What did I say? I'm dyslexic too. But he did that. But also, interestingly enough, what didn't happen is he didn't get a surge. So where are those numbers coming from? Okay, go ahead. It's all yours.
Well, look, I think all the polling at this point is, vastly premature. It kind of reflects name recognition more than your chances 9 months from now. So I'd sort of discard all the polling at the moment. The fundraising, I think, is a little more significant because it kind of shows your ability to fuel the race. And look, he's just to back up from Beto a second. The thing about a race like this is you've got so many people who are relative newcomers to national politics. So, we've got Kamala Harris in her first term. I think Amy Klobuchar and Bernie have been around the longest, but you got a lot of people who haven't been around that long. So they're all kind of tabula rasa, blank slates. They have a lot of things to fill in. And that's kind of everyone's moment. So, Beto is filling in his, and he had a fairly, moderate Democratic record as a 3-term congressman. But, he's getting savaged by the liberals because some of them left, because it's an easy way to go after him in this primaries. I don't know if the voters are that picky that they, want the absolute most progressive person. I think they want someone who can be Trump. And I don't know if in the long run that's going to be helpful to them because Beto is liberal on, the things they care about the most, the environment, abortion,
I don't know about you, but you know where I am? Whoever can beat Trump, that's where I am.
I think that's the most Democratic voters.
I don't think that's true. See, that's where I differ with you because I
think they're all going to be like they're obsessed with identity politics.
Yes, I do. I absolutely do. And I think you have a real serious war with the left trying to gain its footing and its power and not yielding to where we all know elections are actually won, and that's in the center. And yes, that's what I think. And if you watch them and you listen to them, and they're eating their own already. Cory Booker kind of went after Kamala Harris today on her marijuana joke. I mean, they want to get noise. They want to get to the top real quick.
Well, sure. They got to
and they're doing all of that, but they don't care. We're not getting that center thing going. All you're really hearing is, and Sanders, he's feeding it, Matt. He's saying, all the things that are coming up are all the things that I said last year,
Right. Well, sure. And if you were Bernie, you'd do that too.
Well, but I think everybody's doing that. So I'm concerned. I am deeply, and it's not the first time I've said it to you, I am deeply, deeply concerned about the Democratic Party moving to that left so far, that socialism word, which by the way,
yeah, well, look, it's happened before, like with McGovern.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
But, it doesn't always happen. I mean, Dukakis, Geary, Carter, Gore, they were not the most liberal people in the race. And,
No, but these are different times. And
I know these are different times, and we'll see. I think.
Trust me on
I
this.
think there's still.
Trust me.
Well, I don't know if I trust you on it, but I don't think we know yet. I mean, I think this race will change in ways that are unforeseen.
Well, for sure, all races do.
I think Biden could have a lot more black support than people think.
Right.
Because he stood loyally by Obama. That would change the calculus a lot for other candidates. So, look, I'm not surprised they're going after Beto, and Bernie just hired a couple of very left people in the last day or so.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Bernie really has a chance?
Sure. Why not?
There's a wacky quality that now is kind of the halo over his head that he didn't have last time.
Well, he's got things that are going to come up, but, Hillary never attacked him from the right.
True.
Like the fact he wanted to raise trillions of dollars in taxes to pay for new programs. She only attacked him from the left, like his opposition to suing gun manufacturers.
I don't think we should go by Hillary because...
No. I don't know where the other candidates are going to attack him from.
I don't think it's a question of attack. I think that, he was kind of pure and wonderful Bernie and, our nice little socialist and brilliant at getting the money and playing the game and all of that. That's where he was. But what he walked away from the campaign with is what I'm saying is that little, the little cloud that the Peanuts character had. He has a little something going on, which is...
A little bit, yeah.
And I think
but he didn't
have that the first time around. So
no, there's lots of reasons to think, someone like Warren is moving in on his turf.
Right, exactly. Now let's talk about Warren. You brought her up. Eliminate Electoral College. How do you think she's doing so far?
Probably underperforming a little of where people thought she might be. I mean, I think she's tread some interesting ground. She says, I'm a capitalist. I want rules of the road, but I'm a capitalist, which in this party is a shocking statement. Last night she played the reparations game in her CNN town hall. She brought it up, not the questioners from the audience, and she said, she endorsed this bill that John Conyers had proposed and that Ta-Nehisi Coates and others endorsed, which is to create a federal commission to study reparations. So she didn't quite start saying we need to write government checks to every African American, but she did endorse this commission, which is, which starts down that road. And so she's done more than Bernie on it, who said, I don't believe in writing checks. She's in an interesting place. I think she has much more detailed policies out there than the others, which is always kind of interesting.
I don't know that this is going to be...
But I don't know if that's the year it's going to work.
Exactly. I'm not so sure that policy, certainly not for a long time as we get into the whole thing.
I think that American Indian thing, Native American thing did not hit her.
No, I definitely think she was playing it so great and then she lost her nerve. I've always wanted to say that to you. She was doing so well in response to that, and then she had to go have that dumb, blood test, whatever. And I'm like, why? You had it in the bag. You overrode him, but she didn't. And the same thing with Kirsten Gillibrand. She cannot and will not get over Al Franken. She's done. Well,
I just think branding herself as the female feminist women's candidate opens her up to a lot of charges of hypocrisy. She had the harasser in her own office. Right. She was slow to condemn some Pauls in Albany who were in the middle of harassment scandals. Yeah, and the Franken thing.
Well, the Franken thing, I think.
And we haven't even gotten to her years as a tobacco lawyer. And, she was Annie Oakley with guns.
With guns, I was going to say, right?
Yeah, she was like, she's Annie Oakley.
You can get away with anything, but you know what you can't get away with? Grandstanding. Once you become the candidate who grandstands, which is what she did with Franken.
Yeah, I don't think people can have the confidence. And also, I don't think they're going to have the confidence she can beat Trump. You know, I just don't.
Yeah, and she's got a voice problem, woman.
Yeah, I mean, none of them have the national security cred that Hillary had. And I worry in general, none of them, except Biden gets in, is going to really project much
Beto, Beto, you want to call him Beto like a beta. Beto actually, at least had some time in Congress. I mean, he was exposed. The rest of them, not so much.
Well,
low IQ Joe Biden. I thought on Trump's part that was the weakest one he could have played.
That's not the smartest insult about Biden.
Right. And I thought, I thought that gave you, kind of an
I
insight.
should have called him Grandpa Joe.
Right.
Even though he's like a year
Well,
older than him.
He couldn't. There's a great picture that I put
Crazy Joe.
Yeah, Crazy Joe or Stupid Joe or Joe Foot and Mouth disease Joe, but not
gas bag.
Yeah,
Whatever,
but not
something.
but not low IQ. That didn't work. I want to talk about one other candidate. Before I do, I want to bring in something very quickly the Florida Republicans just did today that I knew about
That is
week.
Fascinating down there. Go ahead.
Okay. They decided that, there's the whole thing where the voters voted and said they want felons to have the right to vote once they serve their time. And now all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes this bill in the Republican controlled Congress or House or whatever it is in Florida. And they say, no, they're not going to get their voting rights back unless they pay all their debts back and yada, yada, yada. And of course, you can understand a guy gets out of prison that he's, or she, they're not going to have any money.
Right.
And they just put the kibosh, and that's going to affect the numbers. That is how big a deal they knew the amount of voters that would enter into the Democratic side would be from this. And you know what?
No, that's fascinating.
Those stinking, rotten, lousy, horrible, awful people in Florida and the GOP, I am telling you, unless the Democrats, you heard it here, folks. I worked on this election. I observed the election for the midterms, and I saw how badly the Democrats run the infrastructure here. And unless they send a whole team down into central and northern Florida where so much building is going on, and they're all northerners and there are a lot of Democrats here, and change what they're doing, they again will lose Florida. You cannot have the hokey rednecks who, I'm saying this on the air, who are the old Florida running the Democratic Party here. It doesn't work.
When you say northerners, you mean northern part of the state. You don't.
No. I'm talking about the northerners who have moved down to Florida, who are now populating the central and northern part of the state, where the South Florida had always been where everybody went.
Gotcha.
Now
right.
on both the east and the west coast, that's changing, and they are just not there. I was going to pick up the phone and call Debbie Wasserman Schultz just the other day, and let her have it and say, "Open up your mouth," because the Republicans don't want that to happen. So you're never going to get any. You know what I'm saying? You need. They don't get what's going on here. They just don't get it, because down south where the power base is, they live a completely different life than Central Florida and Northern Florida.
Right.
So I just needed to say that. Now, so I brought that up, and the reason that I brought that up was because I didn't want to end on that. I wanted to end it on this guy, Andrew Yang, very quickly. Talk to us about him and his latest proposal, which will lead us into our next conversation.
Well, it pains me to say it, but Andrew Yang said on Twitter this week that he is opposed to circumcision. Really doesn't believe in it, thinks it's terrible practice, doesn't want anybody promoting it. And, he's, I guess, he'd kept that position undercover, but now he's on point with it. He really doesn't like circumcision.
This is an old anti-Semitic trope, and it's all throughout Europe right now, right? You know that. It's the big...
I did not know that,
yes.
But I don't find it hard to believe.
Okay, so that's the big thing that you hear from everybody in Europe, like in the UK and other, countries in Europe. Stop circumcision, which is where that's going.
Because there is a secular lefty, argument for the, not quite like the vaxxers, but pretty close, saying that this is industrial medicine, and this is terrible.
Right.
Just let the foreskin fly.
Well, oh God, they're also like not wanting it to happen for even though it's Jewish law, they even want to get into that in Europe, affecting it. And that was a lot of that's why I want to bring this Andrew Yang guy up. He also is proposing 1,000 monthly payment to all Americans. And he did draw a campaign crowd of 3,000 people. So
you never know where these outliers like Marianne Williamson, the New Age guru,
I love Marianne as a human
running.
being. She's a friend of mine. Had her on the show a whole bunch of times.
Well, I don't know her.
And we'll have her again. She is New Age. There's no question. But
she could be a sleeper for, I always got along. I always got its communes.
Yeah, no, she's a very interesting. Yeah, she's a very, very wonderful person and an interesting person. But she's.
I just think these super outliers. You never know what can happen with them. They could trim up a few points and get somewhere. maybe,
or they could hurt somebody who would
or
be
hurt somebody,
and
right?
That's another thing. So I wanted to bring him up and just say, whatever, it's another one of those lefties. And here we go again. Which
because it's not an optional ritual in Judaism. It's not like
no.
It's not like one of those things,
right?
Cheese and beef. It's not something that most Jews ignore.
This is big time. This is
big time.
This is at the core of the celebration of life for a male life. Okay, so that being said, then I bring you to you sent me last night, Matt. Oh my God, I read it like I couldn't stop reading. An unbelievable piece.
I hesitated to do it because I thought it might keep you up.
I
make you totally agitated.
Yeah, well, that too. But talk to us about what you sent me. And we only have like 2 minutes, so have at it.
Oh, yeah, it was a Washington Post story that recounted a meeting of Democrats in the wake of the Ilhan Omar thing just not too long ago, in which they, maybe 10 days ago, in which they supposed to be sort of a heart-to-heart about it was mostly Jewish and black members and kind of discussing, discrimination, but kind of the elephant in the room wasn't discussed till the end when a congressman from Minnesota, not Omar, but a Jewish member who, complained about Omar's comments. And everybody got very defensive and the meeting broke up. And it was a pretty good indication of the divisions in the Democratic caucus.
So let me say this to you about this. Interesting is, and it's not getting a lot of play, but there is a move in Minnesota among Minnesota Democrats to have her ousted, Miss Ilhan Omar. She wrote a piece about Palestinian, and Israel in the Post last week, which was, I think it was maybe her trying to cover up a lot of what she really feels. But people are not happy, and I've talked to a couple of my friends in Minnesota. There's a lot more talk there right now about this woman than anybody else. But there is this thing going on. Remember, I said it to you, Matt. I said the problem was really between the black community and the Jews. I think that's a big problem in the Democratic Party that is bubbling up, and people don't understand why. It's the Louis Farrakhan. It's Obama going to the Reverend Wright Church. They're all listening to the same story. They're all call themselves black Muslims, some of them. I'm inundated on Facebook with some of these characters who are ranting and raving about, Palestine and the Jews and Israel and
well, never use social media as a guide.
Well, no, these are people who I know who've emailed me and keep sending me articles, like trying to convince me because as members, that's how they feel. That's how they've been
I think there's no
indoctrinated.
question there is a chasm between Democratic Party regulars, not just blacks and Jews, but I think Democratic progressives, liberals, and the party leadership. And I think that division has grown, in the wake of the failure of various peace proposals since 2000. And I think it's a real issue for Dems. And I'm not surprised that there's a move to kind of, dump Omar. I'm sure she'll get primaried next time. Look, it's tough for Democrats who want to be statewide in Minnesota. It's been embarrassing to a lot of Somalis who've had great relations with Jews and have to go through this. And, you have a lot of pride when someone from your group gets to Congress for the first time. And, you don't want the first thing they're doing to be like,
I'm going to throw this out at you, too. There is a very big difference, and it's a little weird where she is coming from, being a Somali, because Muslim Africans are a very different breed of Muslim, if you will.
Well, sure.
Well, no, it's not. Well, sure. I mean, they're wonderful people. I happen to have a lot of friends in Africa because, I spend a lot of time there. Who are Muslim, who have, just aren't in all of that political crazy.
But leadership has often been, the big conference to, destroy Israel after the 67 war was in Khartoum.
Themselves are
no, I don't think they're as animated as people closer to the scene.
Well, right. So it interests me. She came in here with a goal and with a purpose, and so I don't know what they're going to do about her, because I do think it could prove very harmful to Dems getting reelected. We got to move on. I just want to bring up quickly the Christchurch massacre and Trump's this idiotic
Sure.
lack of response. And so, what can you say about a president of the United States who just, denies who he is and just continues to gin up all the ire and the anger and it's sickening. You got something to say on that?
No, I agree with that. And of course, this difference between the U.S. and New Zealand, where they're, immediately taking steps to do some gun control in the U.S. is extremely striking. And this has been true throughout the Western world, whether it was in, Norway or Scotland, wherever there's been a mass shooting, there's always been a policy reaction. In the U.S., there's, even bump stocks don't get eliminated. So it shows the paralysis in our politics.
Yeah, it's very sad. It's very sad. And to have a leader of the free world, supposedly, who is just ginning it all up to make it even worse is enough to make a person want to kill somebody. I swear to God.
Someone who is pro-gun control in another, age.
Well,
I mean, that's the thing. Does he even really believe it? I don't think so.
Point well made. Thank you for saying that, because I think that's really important, and that's really true. We move on to the Mueller probe. A couple of things here worth talking about in our very short amount of time. One is this, that we've got this story that, surprise, surprise, the FBI suspected the Cohn as foreign agent nearly a year before they raided his.
Right.
That I thought was really telling, and they were focused on a number of things, but certainly one of them is campaign finance, and the other is what was he doing with foreign agents? Hello, a year.
Yeah. Well, when you're hustling for finance for your failing real estate company and you're trying to build in Moscow, things like this can happen. And
oh my God, right?
That's the world they were in now. Who knows if those, I think if Mueller, was prepared to indict on those things, he might have done it. But he didn't. He indicted on other things. He went down the Daniels route. So,
but he may be going through the New York on that. I'm thinking.
Well, that is true, but I think he's not going to. Whatever he does, he doesn't want to throw Cohen back in for another 20 years. I think
no,
he feels
and
like...
I think it's interesting. Adam Schiff said today that he wanted to focus on the influence of foreign power. He was moving off of all the other extraneous things, and that was where he's going on it. He must have taken something from that report today. That was whatever you could get from with the redactions on it. But I thought that was interesting. He made that specific statement.
Yeah.
Here's another one I want, unless you have something to say, go ahead.
Well, I was just intrigued that House Judiciary Chairman Nadler said last night, I think, that Steve Bannon was among those who had turned over thousands of pages of papers. Who knows what Bannon did, knows, but...
6 people showed up to see Steve Bannon
intriguing.
In wherever the hell he was recently.
Yeah, he's got this medicine show. He's taking around to all the fascists, and it's crazy.
And nobody's interested in him. So who knows? I'm sure it's a lot of, he loaded them up with papers, maybe to keep them having to look at all the papers so they don't get anything else done. Never trust anything that Steve Bannon does. He's not. I want to also talk to you about, there was a Suffolk USA Today poll, and in that poll it said the majority think the Mueller probe is a witch hunt. And you start to look at the way the questions were asked in that poll.
Yeah, not a good question. Yeah,
right, okay. So I just wanted to run that by, because it was absolutely meaningless. I was surprised at USA Today on that, though.
Yeah, there's some polls out there I'm very skeptical of when I see them. Rasmussen.
Well, definitely Rasmussen, yeah.
Suffolk, some of the Harris Interactive stuff. The gold standard's kind of Pew.
Yeah.
And, Gallup.
But USA Today is in deep gaga financially, by the way, so I'm surprised that they're playing that game. Trump lawyers intend to block Mueller's report, view it, claim executive privilege. Oy.
Well, the regulation would seem to give the Attorney General a lot of power to,
the Attorney General.
Prescribe what's made public, and, it's certainly possible Barr might use his discretion to do that. Congress could take action to demand it be public. I think they,
I just want to talk about the Attorney General, who was put in there for one reason alone. And I don't know why Mr. Barr wound up being who he is after such an illustrious career prior to his thing with Trump, but he has nothing good in his heart. That's what I'm saying.
Well, he hasn't ended the Mueller investigation. Take heart in that.
Well,
right?
yeah, that would have been a bridge too far for everybody.
Because he's not recused. news. He could shut it down. He could fire
no, you
Rosenstein.
couldn't. He couldn't go that far. And Rosenstein is, by the way, staying for a few more weeks. So that's
and would the thing somehow leak out, even if Bart did curtail it?
Who knows? It will, but it's a game, and it's an ugly game, and I don't like it. Okay, Palace Intrigue, the lightning round. Here we go.
Go.
Donna Brazile to Fox. Okay, she couldn't get herself another deal with the regular, so she sold herself to Fox. That's my opinion.
Yeah, well, TV, you get addicted to TV, and she had been, ushered out of CNN when she kind of was caught.
Right.
Relaying questions to the Hillary camp.
They have two black Dems there on salary. Juan Williams being the other one. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, I don't think he's a Dem anymore. But
well, he is. He is. He's definitely. You listen to him, and I've never heard him, be anything but.
Yeah, I mean, he's like what passes for liberal there, but yeah.
I find that interesting. Who it is that they've hired. Okay, we got to move on because we said what we need to say about her. But okay, right. Florida prosecutors offered a deal to New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft, whereby they will drop the charges against him on the solicited prostitution if he agrees to admit that he would be found guilty if he did go to trial. Okay, they did that as a favor to Trump. Okay, anything there?
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's just figure out who this spa owner is, the one that seems to be like a questionable, dubious character.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that's what we want to know.
Mar-a-Lago, so I guess that's what they're going.
That's what hopefully they're pursuing. I mean, I personally don't. I'm neither surprised nor care that much about whether he goes to jail for a rub and tug. The question really is this owner. Is she like a cutout for Chinese intelligence?
Oh, I'm sure it isn't pretty. Whatever it is, she can be sure.
Doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't
but
look
who
good.
knows?
Not at all.
Could be.
Oh, hello! I got my could be.
That's here every week.
Thank you. I love my could be. All right, Devin Nunes sues Twitter for allowing accounts to insult him. Right, his Devin Nunes
Twitter without insult is like champagne without the bubbles.
Is this Trump, though?
That's what it's based on.
This is Trump. Nunes would never think to do something like this. This is so Trump. Trump said, go and sue them for me. You do it. Do it. I'm telling you to do it. And he's doing it. I mean, it's just absolutely idiotic crapola. I mean, it's just too funny for words. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. God. If everybody on Twitter could litigate. Ugh.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. Okay. Who's winds up on the board of Murdoch's Fox? File under those who leave Congress get great jobs, Mr. former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan.
I can't say I'm shocked. I mean, they do get great jobs, and being on a corporate board is only part of one's portfolio, and it's a good part. It's usually a few $100,000 a year and some trips and. That's just, only to go to a few board meetings. It's not heavy lifting.
It's just, yeah. But yeah, I didn't think they were going to be so kind to him because he was so lousy at what he did. But they are, so there you go. You never know how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the payoff. Get out and we'll give you a better job. I mean, it could be that too. All right, Trump went after John McCain again, and we have got to. We're way over on time. I don't care. We'll go. Geez, I mean, this was sickening, and
yeah, sickening, and yet not unfamiliar.
Crueler by the minute.
Yeah, and I think it's also not just McCain focused. It's like a shot across the bow against the never Trumpers. And
why? What does he get for that?
What he gets is, I think he does want to stave off a primary challenge, even if it's just a symbolic one from.
Yeah, but I don't see what your point is. I don't see why you're saying.
I just think if you're him, you want to go after Republicans who have stood up to him. And so he's always gone after Corker or Flake or others who've done any even moderate opposition to him.
John McCain is dead.
I know, but he's still like a symbol of what the Never Trumpers want.
I don't think the Never Trumpers are afraid of him.
No, I don't think they are either, but I think this was his first jab.
We'll see. It's just,
but also
it's so
it's
unseemly.
pathological.
Yeah, it's pathological. Yeah. No question. It's so so unseemly. And pathological, we saved the best, as far as I'm concerned, for last. George Conway. Trump called George Conway the loser. Here's what my response was to this, okay? And we can talk about John and Martha Mitchell, and you can bring all that up with, their whatever. But here's where this was. Kellyanne Conway, the president of the United States, the man she made, really, and has stood with through thick and thin, he calls her husband the loser. Her children heard that. She heard that. If I didn't like her before, I hate her now because she should have told Trump to go F himself and walked. It was a bridge too far. That's where I am on that. What about you?
I never try to understand anyone else's marriage because
now this isn't about marriage. This is about children now and family and respect for their father and everything else.
I know what you're saying. Who knows how much contempt she has for her husband? I mean, I have no sense of what's going on.
If you have a contempt for your husband, then get the hell out of Dodge. But you still have those children.
Look, I don't have to convince me that it's pretty awful for the kids. I just can't surmise what game was going on, and...
you can't? I think it's very simple. I mean, Conway was just, biting at Trump's butt, and it was a bridge too far, because Trump has got about as much self-control emotionally as a 2-year-old, terrible twos he's been in all of his life. Yeah. And he let loose, but he let loose personally, and that was wrong. And anybody who stood around and watched that today in the public arena. Now George Conway went right over to the Washington Post, and
right,
proved all the things that Trump had said about him lies. Yes, he did work for him. Yes, he
sure,
yada yada yada. But that, to me, if I were Kellyanne Conway, has never been my favorite person in the world, but I respected her at least for her business acumen, if you will. But
I know, look, I don't disagree with what you're saying. The only thing I'd add is we don't know all that's going on. Maybe she leaves in 3 weeks.
Leaves where?
The White House. I don't know.
She should have left today. That should have been like, okay, no, apologize to my husband or bye.
I understand what you're saying.
There are just some things you don't do, and that.
Well, that's the story of these years.
Oh God.
Generally you don't go into a meeting with a Russian leader by yourself.
Oh God.
You don't attack NATO. You don't get in a fist fight with a dead senator. A lot of things are different now.
I am telling you. Okay, okay. This is how I'm leaving you this week, darling. Ready?
Yeah.
Oi.
I'm with you totally.
All right. It's been swell.
Oi. All right, darling. Okay. See you soon.
See you soon. You are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern at hallicasserjayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, iHeart Podcasts, on all your favorite apps. You can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device too. Just say, the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at the Halli CJ Show. From New York Times bestselling author James Geary comes WIT'S End, What Wit Is, How It Works, and Why We Need It. A whimsical book that explores every facet of wittiness, from its role in innovation to why puns demonstrate the essence of creativity. According to Geary, wit is much more than just having a knack for snappy comebacks. It is the quick, instinctive intelligence that allows us to think, say, or do the right thing at the right time, in the right place. In WIT'S End, Geary shows us how wit is both visual and verbal, physical and intellectual. There's the serendipitous wit of scientists, the crafty wit of inventors, the optical wit of artists, and the metaphysical wit of philosophers. Whether we're talking verbal repartee, jokes, jive, through neuroscience, psychology, folktales, spirituality, visual art, and literary history, Geary demonstrates that wit and wisdom are really the same thing. Geary, the author of 4 previous books, is the deputy curator at Harvard University's Nieman Foundation for Journalism. Let's talk with the author of WIT'S End, an avid juggler, James Geary. Nice to have you here. Let's begin. First of all, can I just tell you something? I love whoever did the design on your cover on your book. Wow, great job.
Yes, it's nicely done. Very clever.
Yes,
very witty.
Very witty. And you know what I love? The inside is just as good, so that's something. But I want to talk to you about this first. Avid juggler? That's what it says in your biography. New York Times bestselling author, deputy curator at Harvard University's Neiman Foundation, and avid juggler. That just made me laugh. Why did that make me laugh?
Well, juggling actually has a lot to do with wit. I think to be witty, the essence of wit, I think we tend to think of people who are witty as people who are funny, and being funny is certainly an aspect of being witty, but being witty, I think, at its essence is not so much making jokes, but making connections, and making connections among multiple things all at the same time. And that's exactly what juggling is. And it has to do also with the kind of attention that you pay to things. Like when you're juggling, you can't pay attention to any single ball, or you drop all of them. What you're really paying attention to is the entire your entire field of vision. And so you're not looking at any one thing in particular, and that's what enables you to keep all the balls in the air at the same time. And it's the same with the kind of state of mind, a witty state of mind. You're paying attention to all kinds of things in your field of attention, and then when you notice these hidden connections or hidden similarities between things, that's when you kind of focus and make a witty remark or a pun or a joke or an observation or some kind of connection between things that is in some way surprising or novel.
I want to talk to you about this word wit. I actually went to look it up, because there's so many words we throw around, and I think it's just such an interesting word. It myriad definitions, and also what wit implies. Could you kind of give us a little bit a broad sense of that, or a specific sense, I should say, as to what that wit is?
Absolutely. And the word wit comes from an ancient Sanskrit word, a verb, vid, which means to see. And vid, of course, we know it in English in words like video, which means to see. And but that word also means to know. That's an expression we also have in English. We say, I see what you mean, which basically means I understand, I know. And so that's the root of wit, and that's why I think wit has more to do than just with being funny. It's a kind of intelligence. It's a way of knowing. It's a way of approaching the world, and I think that's why if you think about the expressions that we have with the word wit in them, to live by your wits, to be outwitted, to be dim-witted, to be quick-witted, to reach your wits' end, these are all expressions that really don't have anything to do with being funny, but they have everything to do with a kind of improvisational intelligence, an ability to kind of respond spontaneously in the moment with a smart or clever comeback or solution. And strangely enough, the word wisdom also comes from that ancient Sanskrit verb vid. So wit and wisdom actually mean the same thing. So if you go into a bookstore and see a book, The Wit and Wisdom of Abraham Lincoln, it's actually redundant. The title might as well be The Wisdom and Wisdom of Abraham Lincoln, or The Wit and Wit of Abraham Lincoln. And I think the connection between wit and wisdom also speaks to wit as a way of knowing.
So why did you write a book about wit? Did you think you weren't funny, or
Oh my gosh!
What got you on this?
Can I tell you that? I'll tell you what, though. The first version, the first kind of attempt at writing this book was not funny at all, Halli. I can tell you that. And I really struggled with how to write a book about wit that wouldn't be incredibly boring to read, and also wouldn't kind of destroy. The worst thing you can do to a joke is explain it. And when I started writing the book, I realized that the way I was going about it was really destroying the wit. It wasn't fun to read. And so that's how I came up with the idea to write each chapter in a different style that addresses a different form of wit. So there's there's a couple chapters on verbal wit, and one of which is written as a play, as a dialogue between two characters in a play. Another is written as a rap song, the lyrics to a rap song. I think rap songs are some of the wittiest popular lyrics around today. There's a chapter written in the voice of a guy in a bar telling jokes and kind of musing about the relationship between wit and jokes. There's a chapter on how wit works in the brain, written like a scientific paper. There's a chapter on spiritual wit written as a sermon, like a sermon you might hear in church on Sunday. And I really came to this subject just because I've been fascinated since I was a little kid with witty sayings and aphorisms and proverbs and things like that. Like, I never let school interfere with my education, Mark Twain. And, over the years, that interest kind of grew into an obsession, really. And so I've written books about aphorisms and sayings and metaphor, and finally I realized the thing that's at the core of all these different ways of playing with words and playing with intelligence is wit. So that's how I arrived at the topic.
And it's a delicious read. I read it over a period of time because each chapter is its own story. It's really quite fascinating. I wonder this: is wit something you're born with, or is wit can be developed? What's the story with wit?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think we're all born witty, and like I said, wit isn't just being funny. So, a lot of people think, well, I can't make a joke or have a quick comeback to someone's remark, so I'm not witty. But wit can take many forms. Wit doesn't have to do with language at all. Wit can be visual. There's visual artists, painters, and sculptors who make witty works without any language at all. Clowns are very witty. Silent comedians are very witty. Inventors, entrepreneurs, scientists are very witty. And what they all have in common is they're making these connections between surprising things. So like a scientist who makes a discovery, she's making a surprising connection between something that's been known and something that's not known. And that's an example of wit. So I think we're all born with a core of wit. It just may express itself not verbally, but in other ways. And I also think it can be developed. You can hone your wit. And one way that I like to do that is through pun competitions. I think making puns is a great way to practice your wit. And part of what I do during the talks that I give about the book is I have spontaneous pun competitions with the audience. And, you just name a theme and a couple people volunteer and you have to make a pun as quickly as you can about whatever that theme is. So if the theme were plants, for example, you could say something like, I'm stumped or leave me alone. I don't like pun competitions. But you notice, wit, like any kind of, it's a muscle. The more you practice it, the more you exercise, the wittier you get. And it's got the side effect of it's kind of uplifting. It's kind of, when you make a surprising connection, it's like solving a problem or figuring out a riddle or something like that. You get a little burst of energy and delight. And I think that kind of, it just makes you that much more alert and that much more kind of sharp in your perceptions. And those are the necessary ingredients for wit.
It's so interesting, when you're a kid and how kids are with other kids and somebody gives you a hard time and you never think of what it is you want to say, the retort. And then as you get older, you get a little better at it and a little better at it and a little better at it. And there's just great joy when you're spontaneous on the spot. Yeah, let them have it. Here it is.
That's right.
And you're right. There is a certain joy to all of that.
There's actually a term for that. That's an experience I think we've all had. And a French philosopher, he's mentioned in the book. He's actually one of the characters in that play that I described. He came up with a term for exactly what you're describing, and it's l'esprit d'escalier in French, which means the wit of the staircase. And he came up with that because he was insulted at a dinner party, and he couldn't think of anything to say. He's so taken aback. But going down the stairs on his way home after the dinner party was finished, he thought of it. And, that's why he came up with the wit of the staircase, is the kind of wit that comes only too late when it's too late to actually deliver it.
Yeah.
So this book is a cure for the wit of the staircase.
It certainly is. So listen to this. I must ask you, because it is curious. Things change over time, and I wonder if wit changes over time, or is wit static, or is wit dependent upon where you were raised, or how you were raised, or what country you were raised in. I mean, it really, I know people, I'll give you, my mother had a tremendous sense of wit. And yet she had no sense of humor about so much in life, but when she needed to be, do you know what I'm saying? I mean, she could come up with those retorts. So she was a brilliant woman. But it fascinated me that in some ways, she was very austere and not of wit, and in others, she was so damn witty. What's that all about? Because that's true. You see that in a lot of people. She wasn't alone.
Yeah. So I think I don't think wit kind of ebbs and flows. I think there's a sort of constant. I think wit is a kind of fundamental part of our intelligence and a fundamental part of how we understand and engage with the world. What I would say, though, is that certain periods of history can be wittier or less witty than others. In many respects, the period of history we're living through today is kind of witless.
I was going to say the same word.
if you look at what's happening in politics today, it'd be hard to conclude that there's a lot of people using their wits today. And I think part of that is like what we were talking about earlier. It's how you pay attention and whether you pay attention. So to really be witty, to make those kind of surprising connections that are the essence of wit, you have to listen. You have to pay attention. You have to really hear what other people are saying. And, that doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Not at all. But to really make a combination between like an opinion you might hold and an opinion someone else might hold, you have to really genuinely hear that other person's opinion. And I think there's not a lot of that sincere, authentic listening going on in our political arena today. And so I think there can't be those witty connections made because people are not listening to each other. And so I think the wit is still there, and I think it's essential, especially, for really complex problems like, climate change, which involves economics, ecology, sociology, psychology, all these different fields. You really need to have your wits about you to solve a problem like that because it's so complex. And a solution requires making connections among all those different things. But I think it starts with listening and paying attention. And if we're not doing that, then I think we're really guaranteeing that we're going to be living in a kind of witless age that is not going to be able to address some of the really crucial problems facing us.
It's really interesting because I do have a theory, and I've said it on the show a number of times, sometimes to eye rolls, but others just people seem to understand what I'm saying, which is you could almost tell who is going to be, forgive me, a Trump supporter versus a non-Trump supporter, because I think a lot of it has to do with people's sense of humor, wit, if you will, and how they perceive. I don't find Trump funny at all, and I have many, many, many friends who are Trump supporters, and they just think he's the most hilarious thing that ever walked the face of the earth, and I'm like hitting my head against the wall. Okay, I don't get it. But but I kid you not when I say this. I mean, maybe it's a slightly off topic, but I think it's very, very real. That it may be perception or how we were raised or what our sense of, humor is or our, I could go so far as to say intelligence, but I won't go there. But I don't know if that makes sense to you or if you thought about that.
Well, I think, Trump himself has, I think, said he doesn't really have a sense of humor and doesn't get jokes. But I think, a lot of, I don't really think you can, I wouldn't say you can, measure wit according to like your political allegiance or something like that. But I certainly do think that if you're speaking about Trump supporters, I think those are a segment of them in any case would fall into the category I just described, that they would argue that their concerns, their issues have not been heard and not been addressed. Economic situation with jobs and things like that. And you can agree or disagree with that assessment, but if you want to bridge the divide between these two political camps, you have to really hear what's being said and then address it in a way that acknowledges what's being said rather than kind of just labeling it and moving on or ignoring it. So I think I think it does come back to this listening and trying to find points of connection, even among, the most contradictory points of view that really you can't see how you can reconcile them, because some form of reconciliation is going to be needed if we're going to move forward.
I'll go lighter for you now. Why is this funny?
Wit is a serious business, Halli. So
I think
fine.
I think that's true. But why is this funny? This is in the book. This is from your book. What do you get when you cut a comedian in two? A half-wit. No, I think that cracked me up. Why is that funny?
I think it's funny.
Go ahead.
I think you might have listeners who don't think that's funny, but I think it's funny because, and this is like really what's happening in your brain when you are being witty or you're kind of experiencing wit, and it's activating two different ideas about the same thing at the same time. So, it's like a riddle. You're given a clue, and this, what you just read, is a kind of joke in the form of a riddle. And because you're playing on something that a half-wit, and then you're connecting with something that's kind of absurd, cutting a comedian in two. And when you get the answer, those two meanings are kind of activated at the same time. And it's that kind of collision between those two different things that produces the laughter, or I guess in the case of some of your listeners, the groan or the old eye roll or whatever it is. But I think when wit is happening, that's always a characteristic. There's two different ideas about the same thing, and they're activated in your brain at the same time. And it's like juggling, what we were talking about earlier. It's really a kind of strange state of mind when you have multiple things going on in your head at the same time, when they're all focused on this kind of the same idea or the same object. And that's what creates this delight or surprise or novelty, or the ha-ha reaction or the aha reaction when you figure it out.
Yeah, the brain always is happiest when you're firing on all cylinders, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, no question about it.
That's a very witty observation, by the way. That's very aphoristic.
Oh, well, there you go. Next book, I'll help you. Yeah. So in the beginning was the pun. A pun doesn't always get respect. What's the story there?
Yeah, puns have been historically considered the lowest form of wit. But what I argue in the book is that they're actually the highest form of wit, and I argue that for the reasons we've just been discussing, because it's, making or understanding a pun is the essence of wit. It's activating two different things about two different meanings about the same thing at the same time. And what's interesting about puns, and again, why I think they're core to the experience of wittiness, is that the person who gets a pun and understands a pun is doing exactly the same amount of and kind of creative work that the person who makes the pun is doing. So if I make a pun, if you've seen one shopping center, you've seen them all. You've seen them all.
Right, I got it.
So I made that pun, but the person who hears it, and I made the connection between you've seen them all and you've seen them all, but the person who hears it makes exactly that same connection without any kind of help from anybody else. And so what's interesting about puns is it shows that while jokes can be private, we can have a laugh to ourselves, I think wit really needs witnesses. It's a collaboration between the speaker and the listener. And in many ways, the listener completes the joke or completes the pun. And it's this kind of unique, really interesting, intimate collaboration to actually have the experience of wittiness requires the person who's listening to kind of do half the work. And I think that's why puns should get a lot more credit than they do. Even the worst puns, you're still making those really interesting and surprising connections.
Actually, the worse the puns and the more you get it, the better you feel because you did get it. I mean, and that's part of the joy in all of it. I think there's true. I back in my head pops in. So I got to ask you this because you bring it up in the book, and I think it's true. And that's wit and the terms from fencing. I'm a wordsmith. Yeah. I love that. Talk to me about that a little bit. That's fascinating.
Yeah, if you think about how we describe witticisms, we will say something like, that's a very cutting remark, or that was a very clever riposte, or when someone says, has a witty comeback, someone who's not suffering from the wit of the staircase, and we say, oh, touche. And those are all terms from fencing. Those are all kind of technical terms to describe various fencing maneuvers. And I think what's interesting about that is that fencing is this kind of really fast, sophisticated, spontaneous combat. But what's interesting about it is that the whole point is to touch the other person, but you don't hurt them. It's more about finesse and sophistication and elegance, and so it's not like battling with clubs or something like that. The whole point of fencing is that it's a very targeted, precise maneuver. And I think that's exactly the case with wit. Witticisms are really sharp, cutting, precise sayings. They kind of are surgical strikes. And I think that's probably the reason why we kind of just instinctively take over those words from fencing to describe what we're doing in our minds when we're being witty. And, half the battle in a fencing match is actually not your sword, but it's your footwork and how you position yourself across from your opponent and maneuver him or her into the position where you can have that strike. And I think that's a great example of outwitting, your opponent. That's another way that we use the word. And that, again, is not about being funny, but it's about creating a kind of situation in which your desired outcome actually happens. And so I think fencing is a great way to understand what's happening when we're being witty.
Are the witty among us the smartest, the craziest? All of the above. Who are our most witty people?
Oh, well, I think, today, I think Lily Tomlin is really, really witty. She's got a great saying, all my life I always wanted to be someone, but now I realize I should have been more specific. Which I think
I can relate.
Which I think is really, which is very useful advice. Like I said, I think if you look at popular culture, the lyrics to hip-hop and rap songs are really, really witty because they involve like all the kind of formal qualities of poetry with rhyme and rhythm and things like that, but they're making really sharp, precise, fencing-like comments, social critiques and social commentary and things like that. So, I think those are a couple examples where you see wit in popular culture.
So what about wit and religion? Is that an oxymoron?
No, because I think I wrote an entire chapter about wit and religion, and I think what's going on with wit and religion is, again, this kind of seeing two things in one. If you think about all the religions in the world, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, they talk about signs. Like in Buddhism, the lotus flower is a symbol, a sign of enlightenment. And what is the lotus flower? It's got its roots in like muddy, disgusting ponds, but its blossom is on the surface of the water, and it's elaborate and gorgeous, and it's a kind of sign of how we as people kind of raise ourselves up from the muck of our lives and produce something beautiful or intelligent or charming. And I think that's a kind of religion at its roots is a kind of wit, because in the natural world you see things that are signs of the spiritual world and that have some significance outside the realm of have a psychological, emotional significance beyond their physical significance. So I think the wit of religion is actually seeing that dual nature of reality as it applies to us as kind of physical people and also spiritual people.
Can a man or woman live by wit alone?
It helps to have a little bit of money.
I'm loving that. I'm making you laugh, by the way.
Yes, I think you can live by wit alone. I think living by our wits is what we do every single day. And it's only when we keep our wits about us that we're able to solve the problems that we confront every day, whether they're interpersonal problems, relationship problems, problems at work, problems finding work. We need to be clever, resourceful, and ingenious in our daily lives every single day. So I think ultimately, when it comes down to it, we're living by our wits. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. So I end with this. There are so many great anecdotes in this book. Oh my God, you guys got to pick this book up. It's just so much fun to read. I want to hear your favorite. You have about a minute and a half. Tell us one of your favorite anecdotes uncovered in your research for the book. Is that asking too much on the fly?
No,
come on,
not
use
at
your
all.
wits.
Oh my gosh, I almost lost my wits there for a minute, but now they're back.
Okay.
I'd have to say one of my favorite anecdotes has to do with puns, and this is a guy, 18th century Frenchman, George de Bièvre, and he was famous for his puns, and he hung around the court of King Louis XVI. And, in that time in France, being verbally witty was like highly prized. And he was known as one of the greatest wits of the time. And so he was walking around the garden in Versailles, and he happened to bump into Louis XVI, the king, who was also taking a stroll. And the king saw him and said, "You who make puns on everyone, make a pun on me." And, that's kind of a tense moment when the king of France tells you to make a pun on the spot. And Georges de Bièvre says to the king, "I'm sorry, sir, the king is not a subject." So I think that's like a brilliant example of someone living by their wits and making a pun about the king not being a subject of a pun, and also literally not being the subject, since he's the monarch. He's the one in charge. So I guess that's got to be my favorite anecdote from the book.
James Geary, thank you so, so much. Love this book. Really enjoy talking with you. I've been speaking with James Geary. His book is WIT'S END, What Wit Is, How It Works, and Why We Need It. For more information on James Geary, his book, and his work, visit jamesgeary.com. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show is a production of Resec, LLC. Be sure to tune in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show at hallicasserjayne.com or listen on your favorite app. New podcasts are posted Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern.